In the heart of a raging battle, a lone rider clad in gleaming bronze charges into the fray. His name is Alexander, and he is just 20 years old. Before him stands the mightiest army on earth, the Persian host, a seemingly endless sea of soldiers. But Alexander doesn't see an unconquerable force. He sees a path to glory, a direct line to his rival, the King of Kings, Darius III. This isn't just a battle for a kingdom, it's a clash of titans, a personal duel for the fate of the world. How did a young prince from the rugged hills of Macedonia come to challenge the ruler of an empire that stretched from Egypt to India? This is the story of a boy who believed he was a god and a man who nearly proved it. Born in 356 BC in Pella, the capital of Macedon, Alexander was no ordinary prince. His mother, the fiery Olympias, whispered to him that his true father was not King Philip, but Zeus, king of the gods himself. His father, Philip II, was a brilliant, one-eyed military genius who had forged Macedon from a backwater kingdom into a dominant military power. Philip saw the potential in his son and gave him the greatest education money could buy. His tutor, none other than the philosopher Aristotle. For 3 years, Aristotle schooled the young prince in rhetoric, politics, and science. But it was Homer's Iliad that captured Alexander's imagination. He slept with a copy under his pillow, dreaming of Achilles, the heroic warrior he sought to emulate and even surpass. But it was a wild, untamable stallion that first revealed Alexander's true genius. The horse Bucephalus was so fierce that no man could ride him. King Philip was ready to send him away, but a young Alexander, barely a teenager, stepped forward. He had noticed something others missed. The horse was afraid of its own shadow. Calmly, Alexander turned Bucephalus towards the sun, so his shadow fell behind him. He spoke softly, stroking its neck, before leaping onto its back and riding him to the astonishment of the entire court. His father wept with pride, declaring, "My boy, you must find a kingdom equal to your ambitions. Macedon is too small for you." This single act of perception and courage foreshadowed the man he would become, a leader who saw solutions where others saw only chaos. At just 16, Alexander was left in charge of Macedon while his father was away on campaign. He didn't just sit on the throne, he led an army, crushed a rebellion, and founded his first city, naming it Alexandropolis. 2 years later, at the decisive Battle of Chaeronea, the fate of Greece hung in the balance. It was Alexander, leading the elite companion cavalry, who smashed through the Athenian lines, securing a crushing victory for his father. Philip had united Greece. His next target? The colossal Persian Empire. But fate had other plans. In 336 BC, at his daughter's wedding, King Philip was assassinated by his own bodyguard. In a flash of political chaos and bloodshed, 20-year-old Alexander seized the throne. He ruthlessly eliminated his rivals, quelled rebellions across Greece, and stood ready to fulfill his father's ultimate dream. In the spring of 334 BC, Alexander crossed the Hellespont into Asia with an army of just 48,000 men. He stood on the shores of what is now Turkey, hurled a spear into the soil, and claimed the continent of Asia as spear-won territory. His first major challenge came at the Granicus River. The Persian commanders, confident in their numbers, held the high ground on the opposite bank. Alexander's seasoned general, Parmenion, advised waiting until dawn. Alexander scoffed at the idea. "I would be ashamed of myself if I were afraid of this little stream," he declared, and ordered an immediate attack. He personally led the cavalry charge straight across the river and up the muddy bank, plunging headfirst into the enemy line. It was a chaotic, desperate fight. Alexander's helmet was shattered by an axe blow, and he was nearly killed, saved only at the last second by his friend, Clytus the Black. But his audacity shattered the Persian resolve. The enemy line broke and Alexander won a stunning victory. The path into the heart of Persia was now open. As Alexander marched south, cities fell before him, many welcoming him as a liberator from Persian rule. But the city of Halicarnassus resisted. It was a fortress, protected by massive walls and a formidable navy. Alexander laid siege to it, employing sophisticated siege engines, towering siege towers, and powerful catapults designed by his father's engineers. For months, the battle raged. The defenders fought fiercely, but Alexander's relentless pressure was too much. He breached the walls and took the city, a testament to his mastery of not just open battle, but siege warfare. He was proving to be more than just a reckless warrior. He was a strategic mastermind. A year later at Issus, Alexander faced Darius III, the Persian king, in person. Outnumbered more than 2-1, Alexander's army was pinned against the sea. A conventional commander would have been trapped. But Alexander was anything but conventional. He spotted a weakness in the Persian left flank. In a move of tactical brilliance, he once again personally led his companion cavalry in a decisive arrow-headed charge directly at the center of the Persian line, aiming for one man, Darius. The Persian king, seeing the demonic fury of Alexander and his cavalry closing in, panicked. He turned his chariot and fled the battlefield, leaving his army, his family, and his empire behind. The sight of their fleeing king shattered the morale of the Persian troops, who broke and ran. Alexander had captured Darius's mother, wife, and children, but he treated them with the utmost respect and courtesy, a chivalrous act that won him admiration across the empire. Instead of pursuing Darius immediately, Alexander made a strategic detour south, securing the entire Mediterranean coastline. This was crucial to neutralize the powerful Persian navy. Most cities surrendered, but one stood defiant: the island fortress of Tyre. Believing their island position made them impregnable, the Tyrians refused to submit. Alexander was told it was impossible to take. He responded by ordering his engineers to build a causeway, a massive land bridge nearly a kilometer long, across the open sea to the island. For 7 months, his soldiers toiled under a constant barrage of arrows and fireships from the Tyrian navy. They built 2 massive siege towers to protect the workers, but the Tyrians sent a massive fireship that destroyed them. Undeterred, Alexander rebuilt, bigger and stronger. Once the causeway reached the island walls, his siege engines battered the fortifications, his ships blockaded the port, and his soldiers stormed the city. The fall of Tyre was a brutal affair, a warning to all who dared defy him. Next, he marched into Egypt. The Egyptians, who had long resented Persian rule, welcomed him not as a conqueror, but as a liberator. In a journey that would forever change him, Alexander traveled deep into the desert to the Oracle of Siwa Oasis. There, the priests greeted him as the son of Amun, the Egyptian equivalent of Zeus. Whether Alexander truly believed it or simply understood its powerful political value is unknown. But from that day forward, he began to see himself as something more than mortal. On the coast of the Mediterranean, he founded the most famous of his cities, Alexandria, a place destined to become the intellectual and cultural center of the ancient world. With the coast secure, Alexander turned inland to hunt Darius. In 331 BC, on the plains of Gaugamela, the two rivals met for their final, epic confrontation. Darius had gathered a colossal army, rumored to be as many as 1 million men, though modern estimates are closer to 250,000. He had scythed chariots, war elephants, and cavalry from every corner of his vast empire. He had even leveled the ground to give his chariots a clear run. Alexander's army was outnumbered at least 5-1. The night before the battle, his generals were nervous. Parmenion suggested a night attack. Alexander famously replied, "I will not steal my victory." He was so confident that he slept soundly until well after sunrise. The battle was a masterclass in tactics. Alexander drew the Persian cavalry out to the flanks, creating a gap in their front line. Then, just as he had at Issus, he led a thunderous charge directly at the weakened center, aiming straight for Darius. History repeated itself. The King of Kings fled once more, and the largest army ever assembled dissolved into chaos. Alexander was now the undisputed master of Persia. He marched into Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis, the glittering capitals of the Persian Empire, seizing unimaginable wealth. In a controversial act, he burned the grand palace of Persepolis. Was it revenge for the Persian burning of Athens a century and a half earlier? or a drunken accident? Historians still debate it, but the message was clear. The Achaemenid dynasty was over. A new era had begun. Alexander chased the fugitive Darius for months, deep into the eastern provinces. But he would be denied his final confrontation. Darius was murdered by his own nobleman Bessus, who then declared himself king. Alexander gave Darius a royal funeral and swore to avenge his death, positioning himself as the legitimate successor to the Persian throne. He then began adopting Persian customs, wearing Persian dress, and demanding that his Macedonian and Greek soldiers perform proskynesis, the Persian act of prostrating oneself before the king. This did not sit well with his fiercely independent Macedonian veterans. They saw him as their king, not a divine Eastern despot. Tensions boiled over in a drunken argument where Alexander, in a fit of rage, killed Clitus the Black, the very man who had saved his life at the Granicus. Alexander was consumed by grief and remorse for days, a sign of the growing pressure and paranoia that haunted him. Despite the internal turmoil, his ambition remained limitless. He pushed further east into what is now Afghanistan and Pakistan, territories no Greek had ever seen. He fought brutal guerrilla wars against local warlords in the mountains of Sogdia and Bactria. It was here he met and fell in love with Roxana, the daughter of a local chieftain, marrying her in a grand ceremony that aimed to unite his Macedonian and Persian peoples. In 326 BC, he reached India. At the Hydaspes River, he faced his most formidable opponent yet, King Porus and his army of war elephants. The Macedonians had never faced elephants in battle, and the sight of these towering beasts terrified them. In what is considered his final tactical masterpiece, Alexander used a feint to cross the river upstream during a monsoon storm. The ensuing battle was ferocious. The elephants wreaked havoc on the Macedonian phalanx, but Alexander's disciplined troops adapted, targeting the elephants' mahouts and surrounding the great beasts. In the end, Alexander's superior strategy won the day. He had so much respect for the courage of Porus that he not only returned his kingdom, but also added more territory to it. Alexander wanted to push on to the end of the world, the river Ganges, but his army had finally reached its limit. After 8 years and thousands of miles of marching and fighting, they were exhausted. They had faced deserts, mountains, monsoons, and monstrous elephants. They were homesick and weary. At the Hyphasis River, his army mutinied, refusing to go any further. A furious Alexander sulked in his tent for 3 days, but his men would not budge. For the first time, he was forced to yield. He agreed to turn back. The journey home was a nightmare. He split his forces, sending part of the army back by sea while he led the rest through the brutal Gedrosian desert, a terrifying wasteland where more of his soldiers died of thirst and heat than in any battle. He finally returned to Babylon in 323 BC, a city he planned to make the capital of his new, multicultural empire. He organized a mass wedding of 10,000 of his soldiers to Persian women to further his vision of a fused Greco-Persian culture. He was planning new campaigns, a circumnavigation of Africa, an invasion of Arabia. His dreams were as vast as the world he had conquered, but they would never be realized. In June of 323 BC, after a prolonged bout of drinking, Alexander fell ill with a fever. For 10 days he battled for his life, but his body, worn down by countless wounds and years of campaigning, finally gave out. On his deathbed, his generals asked him to whom he left his empire. His final whispered words were, "To the strongest." He was just 32 years old. Alexander's death plunged his vast empire into half a century of civil war, as his generals, the Diadochi, tore it apart in their lust for power. His dream of a unified world died with him. And yet, his legacy is immeasurable. He didn't just conquer territory. He spread Greek culture, language, and ideas across the known world, initiating the Hellenistic Age. He founded over 20 cities, many of which remain today. He was a military genius whose tactics are still studied, a visionary leader, a ruthless conqueror, and a man haunted by his own divine ambitions. He was the boy from Macedon who rode the untamable horse, who was tutored by Aristotle who wept when there were no more worlds to conquer. Alexander the Great remains one of history's most fascinating and monumental figures, a legend whose name still echoes through the ages. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the life of one of history's greatest figures, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next adventure into the past. Let us know in the comments which historical figure you'd like to see us cover next. Until then, stay curious.